How did he die?
No contact, not well.
You needn't worry. The second is...
Yes. Considerably.
Daniel Craig takes Bond back to the beginning in Casino Royale. I'm Richard Roeper. Filling in for Roger this week is the film critic for the New York Times, A.O. Scott. Welcome back, Tony.
Thanks for having me again. Our first movie is Casino Royale, and it's the 21st James Bond movie. But it is based on the first book in Ian Fleming's series of novels about the dashing British super spy. So it takes a look at Bond's early career. At the beginning, we see the 2 kills that get him promoted by his boss, M, once again played by Dame Judi Dench, to 00 status. Before too long, Bond is on the trail of a supervillain known as Le Chiffre, who finances international terrorism.
I suppose our friend, Mr. White, will have told you that I have provided reliable banking services for many other freedom fighters over the years.
Do you believe in God, Mr. Le Chiffre?
No. I believe in a reasonable rate of return.
That's Mads Mikkelsen, a terrific Danish actor who shows himself to be a classic Bond baddie. 007 himself is played by the versatile Daniel Craig, who may not be the best James Bond ever, that will always be Sean Connery, but who I think may be the best actor ever to play James Bond.
I knew it was too early to promote you.
Well, I understand 00s have a very short life expectancy, so your mistake will be short-lived.
On his mission to catch Le Chiffre, Bond is partnered with an employee of the British Treasury named Vesper Lynd, who's played by Eva Green, surely one of the sexiest accountants in movie history.
Oh, we've been involved for quite a while. Hence the shared suite.
But my family is strict Roman Catholic, so for appearance's sake, it'll be a 2-bedroom suite.
I do hate it when religion comes between us.
Religion and a securely locked door.
Bond not only has his way with Vesper, that much you expect, but he falls in love with her as well, showing a soft side that may trouble fans who like their Bond as cold and dry as he likes his martinis. Casino Royale does run on a little too long, and for my taste, it spends way too much time at the card table. Now, watching other people play cards has never been my idea of a good time. Now, if 007 and his nemesis had been staring each other down over a Scrabble board, let's say, that would have been something to see. But I have to say, all the same, Casino Royale, thanks to its panache and style, and to Daniel Craig and Eva Green, gets a thumbs up.
Tony, I give the movie a thumbs up. I give Daniel Craig a big thumbs up.
Yes.
I think he's great as Bond. I think you made a lot of good points about him. I think he's the grittiest Bond, the most athletic, probably the closest to Ian Fleming's original vision.
Yeah.
The movie, you're right, it's far too long. I mean, it's almost 2.5 hours long, and we get some of these extended stunt sequences with almost like a Jet Li movie, and it's impressive, but it's got nothing to do with anything.
Well, I
What's
think they
going
also
on?
make the mistake of really front-loading. I mean, there's this great chase scene up and down all these construction cranes somewhere in Africa, and you never really learn who he's chasing and why.
It's just so they can give us a great action
embassy
sequence and say, hey, you're not going to be bored with this movie. Craig is great, though, and they have a lot of fun with the Bond franchise. There's a twist, so to speak, on the martini line.
Yes.
He has a fun moment with Eva Green about giving her a name that sounds like some of the old Bond names. There's an Aston Martin appearing there. And I also have to tell you, as an amateur poker player, you're right. I like the Texas Hold'em stuff, but they make the same mistake in this movie that they've made in every movie, going all the way back to Cincinnati Kid. They make it about the cards and not the players, and they give these guys hands that would never occur in the real world. And there's more drama on the World Series of Poker.
There's only so many times that you can, be pumped up with all kinds of suspense watching people turn over, a pair of jacks.
Well, but those quibbles notwithstanding, it's about the plot, and I think there are too many villains, and that kind of meanders around. But Daniel Craig, introducing him as the next generation of James Bond, I want to see him. I think if they get him a tighter script, that he could be in the best Bond movies, all the way going back to Sean Connery.
And I thought Eva Green was terrific also.
I
mean, just, doing something a little more than what the sort of the usual Bond girl
Exactly.
bimbo
They give her
stuff.
better roles.
Yeah.
So it's a good film. I think he's going to be a great James Bond.
I hope so, yeah.
Okay, now, next movie. Some of the ingredients in Fast Food Nation are quite flavorful. You have a sharp director and Richard Linklater, a terrific cast, including Bruce Willis, Greg Kinnear, Wilmer Valderrama, Ethan Hawke, and Catalina Sandino Moreno. We get some hilarious satire and some gruesomely effective scenes. This is a distractingly cheap-looking docudrama based on the best-selling non-fiction book about the fast food industry. Love that book. Kinnear plays Don Anderson, marketing exec for a burger chain known as Mickey's.
And the fecal coliform counts were just off the charts. I'm concerned that this could be a problem for us. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Not exactly.
I'm saying there's in the meat.
And that would be your first indication you might not want to grab a burger after this movie. Valderrama plays a Mexican illegal who gets a job at the Colorado plant where they make all those tasty Mickey's burgers.
A una manguera de presión y yo pues riegue agua para limpiar la sangre, la grasa, el pelo y toda la mierda que queda de las vacas.
Linklater does have a lot to say about border crossings, our treatment of undocumented workers and slaughterhouses and predatory bosses and idealistic college students and sellout executives and even more. Watching Fast Food Nation is like trying to eat a 4-foot-tall burger. To me, at least, there were just too many ingredients, so thumbs down.
Well, I like this movie. I give it a thumbs up.
Okay.
I see your points. I mean, there is a lot. This is a movie that's trying to be about even more than just, you know, fast food restaurants and the food chain, but about sort of American culture and society and where we're all at. And I really liked Wilmer Valderrama and also Catalina Sandino Morena, who plays his wife. The slaughterhouse scenes were very powerful. I loved Avril Lavigne as the young.
Well, I love that
niece
scene
of,
where these college students are like, you know, let's free the cows from this place, and they learn firsthand that, you know, cows are kind of stupid. I mean, what would cows do when you free them?
I like that whole plot too, because it really showed this sort of the idealism and political consciousness being raised, and you know, sort of, but where do you go? How do you take action? It's a kind of a loose, messy, baggy movie in the way that a lot of Richard Linklater's movies are. I mean, he makes his best movies about
his movies,
people
of course,
talking.
do. I mean, they meander all over the place. But in this case, Tony, I just felt like he had so many really good, strong storylines. We have too many plot threads that I think if they had just gotten rid of those, given us a little more meat, so to speak, with the main storylines, this could have been a great film. So for me, it was very frustrating.
I actually like that structural aspect of it, just the way that you kind of had to find your way.
I just like that whole slaughterhouse thing where we got to see step by step how cows become burgers.
Well, many animals were harmed in the making of this film.
I would say so. Okay, later in the show, Emilio Estevez, Sharon Stone, and William H. Macy star in Bobby. And next, Robin Williams and Nicole Kidman voice Happy Feet.
To the forbidden shore.
Don't push me, 'cause I am close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head.
Our next movie is Happy Feet, and it's the new computer-animated spectacle directed by George Miller, whose other credits range from Mad Max to Babe, Pig in the City. And it stars, well, just about everybody. Nicole Kidman, Hugh Jackman, who seems to be in every other movie this fall, Robin Williams, who does 2 different ethnic dialect voiceovers, Brittany Murphy, Anthony LaPaglia, and on another epic journey, recovering Hobbit Elijah Wood. Wood gives voice to an emperor penguin named Mumbles, whose feet replicate the moves of the great tap dancer Savion Glover. The movements of the penguins in this movie are beautifully rendered, as is their icy, watery habitat. There are some fine dance numbers, some thrilling action sequences as well. Happy Feet is overstuffed, an overstuffed stew of themes, plots, semi-clever pop cultural references, and familiar characters. And I confess I'm a little worn out by all the cartoon pleas for interspecies understanding that we've been getting lately, but Happy Feet was made with enough skill and enough heart to get a thumbs up from me.
I'm with you all the way on this one, Tony. I'd give it a mild thumbs up. I mean, we see in this movie a lot of themes that we've seen in a million other animated movies about the kind of the runt of the litter from Nemo on down. And then the last 15 minutes, as you mentioned, where they get into this whole man versus nature thing, and it's rendered okay, but it comes out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden we're seeing almost a different form of animation as well.
Well, it's true, and there is so much. I mean, it starts out, the kind of the musical idea, it starts out with all the penguins singing, and you have Nicole Kidman and Hugh Jackman sort of courting each other, and that's really lovely. But
like
yes,
that,
it's just, and Robin Williams, you know, 2 voiceovers from Williams.
I love when you know, going all the way back to the Disney films of the 90s, but I think Robin can take a break from animated films. I do have to say one thing I like about this. First of all, I want to say that I think kids will love it because I think the penguins are cute. But also, I appreciate it that at the beginning of the film, they actually told us who some of the actors were, because a lot of times with these animated films, you're trying to figure out, you know, put the actors to the animated
And it's strange
characters.
that both Kidman and Jackman, neither one of them sounds Australian at all.
It's amazing, but they do sound penguin.
Later in the show, Heath Ledger stars in Candy, and next, Emilio Estevez's Bobby.
Are too short. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because you'll get a wet, critically injured baby.
Looking at movies now in theaters, which I reviewed with last week's guest critic Harold Ramis. Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, and Fred Willard in for-year consideration got 2 thumbs up. We split on A Good Year with Russell Crowe, and Christian Bale and Eva Longoria in Harsh Times, and that got 2 thumbs down. Okay, our next movie is Bobby, and it features perhaps the most eclectic cast of the year. You've got Anthony Hopkins, Lindsay Lohan, Harry Belafonte, Ashton Kutcher, Demi Moore, and Sharon Stone, all part of the huge ensemble. Written and directed with much passion and sentimentality, not so much subtlety, by Emilio Estevez, Bobby takes place entirely in the Ambassador East Hotel in Los Angeles on June 5th, 1968. That's the last day of Robert F. Kennedy's life. Kennedy himself appears only in newsreel footage and voiceovers. William H. Macy plays the hotel's manager, and Christian Slater oversees the kitchen staff.
Did you tell them that they couldn't leave to vote? They're not gonna vote. Half of them are illegal, they can't vote. Why give them the time off for something they can't do anyway?
Demi Moore plays a rapidly aging, booze-guzzling entertainer. Sharon Stone is the hotel's top stylist.
We're like melting ice cream cones. You know what? I was wondering, like, exactly, I was thinking, when did I grow that flat spot on my head?
In one of the most effective story threads, Lindsay Lohan plays a teenage girl who's going to wed former classmate Elijah Wood, so he won't be shipped to Vietnam.
You should only get married once. Like our parents. It's not frivolous. It's not disposable.
I'm okay with it. In my heart and in my head. And you're not taking anything away from me. This is my choice, William.
With 20-plus characters milling about on one hectic day, Estevez wants Bobby to be a Robert Altman-level American epic on the order of something like Nashville. To that end, he falls short. However, Bobby does do a solid job of telling one generation what the world was like in the summer of 1968 and reminding another generation of a time when they believed a politician could really change the world. So I'm giving this one thumbs up.
Well, I wish I could. I mean, I think this is such a good-hearted, such a sincere, you know, earnest and well-intentioned movie. It just didn't work for me dramatically at all. I felt, you know, it was less like Nashville to me than like, you know, The Towering Inferno or an episode of Fantasy Island.
I mean, it does feel like every time someone shows up, you're like, wow, there's Harry Belafonte, there's Lindsay Lohan, there's Demi Moore, all these people.
Who isn't it? I mean, I think it's true. It's the third movie we've talked about today that feels a little overcrowded, I think. And just it never really took dramatic shape for me. I mean, the thing that it was about was this external event that you're waiting to happen, and when it comes, it's quite powerful. What I will say...
Well, I mean, that's the thing, Tony, and I do think Estevez, with all these characters, you do care about a lot of them, so that when we get to that moment when Bobby Kennedy goes through the kitchen of the Ambassador East on his way to a press conference and shots ring out, we do want to know what happens to these, you know, fictionalized versions of the other people who were really there at that point. I didn't mention Freddie Rodriguez as the busboy who ends up cradling Robert F. Kennedy. I mean, that's very moving, it's very touching, I think, and very well rendered by Estevez.
The most moving thing, I thought, though, was the speech by Kennedy himself that comes at the end, which was just extraordinary contrast to what I think.
And I think Estevez does a really good job of incorporating that real footage and using some audio. And I do think for younger people, especially, it'll be something that'll help get them to understand what was going on at the time.
Well, I think its intentions are good, but for me, it didn't quite work. Next up is Candy. It's an Australian film directed by Neil Armfield that stars two of that country's finest young actors. Heath Ledger, well known after his performance in Brokeback Mountain last year, and Abby Cornish, less famous at the moment, but likely to follow one of these days in the footsteps of Nicole Kidman and Naomi Watts. Like them, she's a brave actress as well as a beautiful one, and she gives her all in this performance as a young art student named Candy who falls under the spell of heroin.
We had a lot going for us. We'd found the secret glue that held all things together.
Candy and her boyfriend Danny, who dabbles in poetry, follow a familiar spiral into addiction. They're aided by a sinister professor, played by Jeffrey Rush, who supplies them with cash and drugs and a cynical, ugly kind of junkie wisdom.
When you can stop, you don't want to. When you want to stop, you can't. One of life's little riddles.
But before too long, heroin has taken over their lives, and Candy is selling her body for drug money. Despite of some well-directed sequences, Candy is a drab, unoriginal, exploitative picture, hardly worth the talent or conviction of its hardworking stars. Thumbs down on this one.
Well, I'm going to give it thumbs up, but I'm going to ask you now how does it? What is it exploiting, and how is it exploiting anyone?
Well, I just think the way that it in some ways both, you know, glamorizes heroin use and then shows you, rubs your face in how terrible it is. I felt like,
well,
it felt very, very familiar to me, and I thought that, you know, when you see actors exposing themselves in this way, just sort of emotionally, you want more from it.
See, Tony, I think it does very little glamorizing, although you do, I think, have to depict the allure and the undeniable attraction of heroin to people who are addicted to it. If not, then nobody would become addicted to it. I mean, it makes you feel really, really, really good before horrible things happen. And I think the performances here are so strong. Heath Ledger, who I think is underrated as an actor, and Abby Cornish, I agree with you, is going to become a star in the States, and deservedly so. And Jeffrey Rush, I think that, he's not just an evil, sinister guy. He's an interesting guy, and you can see why, he kind of adopts them, and they have this sort of weird, dysfunctional family, because obviously their own families they have so many problems with. And I thought all of that was original and interesting. This is not a movie I'd ever want to see again. You see it once, and it's not like, boy, I want to, it's the feel-bad movie of the year, but I think it's so well done.
Heaven and
well
earth
written.
And hell.
Yeah, exactly. And even heaven isn't all that heavenly, but I think it's a very strong effort.
All right. Well, we disagree.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And I've got another strong effort for you. This is actually one of my favorite little movies of the year. And I don't want to be condescending and even say little movies. It's just one of my favorite movies of the year. It's called Come Early Morning. Ashley Judd, she kind of got lost in all those crime thrillers a few years back, but she gives one of her best performances in this very impressive writing and directing debut from actress Joy Lauren Adams. This is a quietly powerful film about small-town southern living that avoids all the usual cliches and makes us feel as if we're dropping in on real lives in midstream. Judd plays Lucy, who's smart but self-destructive, spending most of her free time in a local bar hooking up with strangers. And Laura Prepon from That 70s Show turns in a nice performance as her best friend, Kim.
When do you see your dad?
Quick stop.
They sell dads there now.
Buy two, get one free.
What happened to your face?
Got in a fight, Kim, and I don't really want to talk about it.
Okay.
The veteran Scott Wilson plays Lucy's father, a reclusive alcoholic who has no idea how to connect with his daughter.
Music was different.
The last chapter of Psalms says, praise him with trumpet sound. Praise him with lute and harp.
Guess a lute player is pretty hard to come by.
We just used the guitar.
Lucy's attempts to connect with her father and with her extended family are heartbreaking without being overwrought. When we get to Lucy's final scene, my only regret is that we don't get to spend more time with her. Big thumbs up for me, Tony.
I like this movie a lot, and Ashley Judd's performance is just really terrific. And one of the things is that she's not, she's not pathetic and she's not sympathetic. She's a very complicated character.
Yeah.
She has her kind of her rough edges and the things about her that are attractive, and it's just a very lived-in, very real performance. And as you say, the whole setting of the movie, it's a movie about the South that isn't trafficking in the usual sort of redneck, red state cliches. And it doesn't force anything. I mean, there's some drama. There are a few dramatic moments, but they're well spaced out and separated and prepared for. And there's just, yeah, it's a movie that you have a really warm feeling about.
Yeah, I really love this movie, and I'll tell you, Tony, when people start talking Oscars, and I hope people remember Ashley Judd in this movie. It's an Oscar nomination-worthy performance.
I agree with you.
Okay, coming up next, if you like Borat, I've got something for you in the Thumbs Up video segment. But first, here's a look at what Tony and I will review on next week's show.
What if you had to tell someone the most important thing in the world, but you knew they'd never believe you? I do not need.
Does not need
a microphone. A microphone.
This week's Thumbs Up videos are brought to you by Raisinets. Make a deliciously smart choice with Raisinets.
And the hottest of all was 2005.
Looking at movies new on DVD this Tuesday, Al Gore's documentary An Inconvenient Truth got 2 thumbs up from Roger and me, and Larry Clark's What's Up, Rockers, which got a thumbs down from me, a thumbs up from Roger. And my pick this week is Ali G Into House. It's a 2002 film that nobody in the States saw. Definitely worth seeing. Obviously, this is another Sacha Baron Cohen film, and I think Ali G is just as funny as Borat.
I agree. And my pick this week is Who Killed the Electric Car, which is a nice companion piece to the Al Gore documentary An Inconvenient Truth about the difficulties in solving this environmental mess we find ourselves in. It's a lot of fun.
Pretty neat little film. Yeah. Okay, both of our picks are available right now.
Closed captioning for Ebert and Roeper is sponsored by
MovieTickets.com. Don't miss another show. Buy your tickets online at MovieTickets.com, your own personal box office.
Okay, recapping the movies on this week's show. 2 thumbs up for Casino Royale. We split on Fast Food Nation. 2 thumbs up for Happy Feet. Split again on Bobby. And we split yet another time on Candy, but 2 thumbs up for Come Early Morning.
And for Roger's print review of Stranger Than Fiction and other movies, you can check out RogerEbert.com. That's it for this week's show. Until next week, the balcony is closed.
Jelly Belly Juicy Pear Jelly Beans, each handcrafted with the finest ingredients. No wonder they taste so real. Get real. Get Jelly Belly.
New Cherry Splash Lip Infusion from Blistex. It's the first water ride for your lips. Wow. Discover Blistex. Discover what your lips are missing.
What's in emergency that makes you feel so good? B vitamins for that afternoon boost. Emergency, feel the good.